When I tried to open the refrigerator in my own kitchen, she slapped my hand, just like that, as if I were a naughty child sneaking sweets. The sound echoed in the pre-dawn silence, and for a moment I couldn't believe what had just happened. I stood paralyzed, looking at my reddened hand, feeling the physical sting that was nothing compared to the humiliation churning inside me. Tiffany looked at me with those eyes full of contempt, as if I were a bothersome bug in her way, and said in an icy voice I'll never forget, "Where do you think you're going without permission?" I couldn't answer. The words caught in my throat. I felt like my own house had become a prison where I was the intruder. And then I heard the voice of Marcus, my son, the baby I carried in my belly for 9 months, the one I nursed, the one I watched over every night when he had a fever, saying something that ripped my soul in two. "My wife is the boss of this house now. You need her permission even to breathe." In that moment, my world crumbled, not because of the slap, not because of her words, but because my own son was betraying me. I felt like the floor opened up beneath my feet and swallowed me whole. I was 62 years old and never imagined I'd end up like this, being humiliated in my own home, the same home I built with so much effort alongside my late husband, Arthur. The walls, which once echoed with laughter and love, now seemed to be closing in on me, suffocating me. I looked at Marcus, searching for some trace of the son I knew, but all I saw was a stranger, a completely dominated man, with empty eyes, repeating his wife's words as if they were a sacred commandment. I wondered when I had lost him, when he stopped being my boy and became this woman's puppet. Tiffany crossed her arms over her chest and smiled. That smile held nothing human. It was pure, distilled cruelty. "Now get back to your room, Estelle," she said, using my name like it was an insult. "And next time you're hungry, you'll ask politely. There are rules here, and you will follow them. Understood?" I nodded, because I couldn't do anything else. My legs were shaking, and I felt that if I opened my mouth, only a broken sob would come out. I turned around and walked toward my bedroom, feeling their gazes pinned to my back like knives. Every step weighed on me as if I were carrying the whole world on my shoulders. I closed my bedroom door and sank onto the bed. Tears began to stream down my cheeks uncontrollably. I cried silently, biting my lips to keep from making a sound, because even to cry, I needed permission in my own house. My stomach growled with hunger, but the emotional pain was far stronger than any physical need. How did I end up here? How did I let this happen? The questions tormented me as I stared at the ceiling of my room. That ceiling I painted myself years ago when Arthur was still alive. I felt like a stranger in my own life, as if someone had stolen my existence and left me only an empty shell. I thought of Arthur, my late husband, and wondered what he would say if he could see this. He was always a man of principle, a man who would never have allowed anyone to treat me like this. He would have confronted Marcus. He would have knocked some sense into him. But Arthur had been under the ground for 3 years, and I was completely alone in this nightmare. I remembered the night Marcus called me 6 months ago with that desperate voice no mother can ignore. "Mom, I need your help. Tiffany and I are going through a tough time. I lost my job and we can't afford the rent. Could we stay with you just for a while? I promise it'll be temporary." How could I refuse? He was my son, my only child, the most important person in my life after Arthur. Of course I said yes. Of course I opened the doors of my home without a second thought. I never imagined I was inviting a demon into my home. At first, everything seemed normal. Tiffany was polite, even pleasant. She helped me with some housework. She smiled when I looked at her. She called me mother-in-law with apparent affection. Marcus seemed relieved to have a roof over his head and constantly promised he would find a job soon and they would leave. "It's just temporary, Mom," he repeated every week. But the weeks turned into months, and I started noticing small changes. Tiffany began rearranging my kitchen without asking. She moved my pots to places I couldn't easily reach. She replaced my bath towels with ones she bought, leaving mine stored in a drawer as if they were trash. Small invasions that I ignored because I didn't want to cause conflict. Then she started with the suggestions. Estelle, don't you think it would be better if you ate dinner earlier? Marcus and I need privacy in the evenings. Or, Estelle, try not to make so much noise in the morning. You wake us up. Each suggestion was an order in disguise, and I, like a fool, obeyed to keep the peace. Marcus never said anything. When I tried to talk to him about Tiffany's behavior, he just shrugged and said, "She's stressed about the money situation, Mom. Give her time." It was always give her time. It was always be patient. It was always me who had to give in. One day, Tiffany decided my TV schedule was inappropriate because she wanted to watch her shows. Another day, she determined I couldn't use the washing machine on weekends because it was her time to do their laundry. And Marcus nodded to everything like an obedient dog following its master's commands. But nothing prepared me for what came next. Nothing prepared me for the moment when my own house would cease to be mine and I would become a prisoner in the place where I spent the best years of my life. The storm was just beginning, and I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. Everything truly began to change 3 months ago, when Tiffany announced during dinner that she had made some important decisions to improve the cohabitation in the house. I remember her setting her silverware down on the table with a sharp clank that made me jump in my seat. Marcus looked at her with that expression of sickening adoration that churned my stomach. "Starting tomorrow," Tiffany said, with a voice so firm she sounded like she was leading a corporate meeting, "we are going to establish clear rules. This house needs order and discipline." I looked at her, not understanding, expecting Marcus to intervene, to say something, anything, but he just nodded as if it all made perfect sense. "Rules?" I asked timidly, feeling my voice tremble. "Tiffany, this is my house. I don't understand why we need rules." She looked at me as if I had just said the stupidest thing in the world. She sighed in exasperation and crossed her arms, that gesture I already knew meant she was about to say something unpleasant. "Precisely why we need rules, Estelle. Because this is your house, and you've let it turn into chaos. Marcus and I can't live like this. If we're going to stay here, things are going to be done my way." The way she pronounced "my way" chilled my blood. She wasn't suggesting, she was imposing, and Marcus still sat there in silence, betraying me with his indifference. The next day, a list appeared taped to the refrigerator, a long list written in Tiffany's perfect handwriting, detailing everything I could and could not do in my own house. I read every line, feeling the indignation rise in my chest like a wild animal trying to escape. Kitchen schedule. Estelle can use the kitchen only between 8 and 9 in the morning and between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. Outside of those hours, the kitchen is Tiffany's exclusive territory. Exclusive territory in my own house. I kept reading with trembling hands. Bathroom use. Estelle must shower before 7 in the morning or after 10 at night, so as not to interfere with the couple's routine. My lifelong routine, the shower I took every morning at 8 while listening to the news on the radio, no longer mattered. I had to adapt to them. Living room use. Friday and Saturday nights are exclusive to Marcus and Tiffany. Estelle must stay in her room after 8 p.m. They were banishing me to my room as if I were an old piece of furniture cluttering the living room. The list went on for more than 20 points, each one more absurd and humiliating than the last. I ripped the list off the refrigerator with such force that I tore a corner. I marched straight to the bedroom where Marcus and Tiffany were still sleeping. I knocked insistently, feeling the rage run through my veins like boiling lava. "Marcus! Marcus! I need to talk to you right now!" Tiffany opened the door wearing a pink silk robe I'd never seen before, probably bought with the money I gave Marcus for his expenses. She looked at me with annoyance, as if I were a bothersome salesperson interrupting her morning. "What is it, Estelle? We were sleeping." "This," I said, shaking the list in front of her face. "This is what's wrong. Who do you think you are to make rules in my house?" My voice came out louder than I intended. Years of accumulated frustration were finally finding an outlet. Behind Tiffany, Marcus appeared, rubbing his eyes, disheveled and confused. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked, with that boyish voice he used when he wanted to avoid trouble. But he wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man of 35 who had chosen his wife over his mother, and that choice was slowly destroying me. What's going on is that your wife has put a list of rules on my refrigerator as if this were her house and I were some guest, I said. Are you going to allow this, Marcus? Are you really going to let her treat me like this? I looked at him pleadingly, searching for some trace of the loving son who used to defend his mother against anything. Tiffany stepped forward before Marcus could answer. These rules are necessary, Estelle. You can't keep living as if you're alone. We are 3 people in this house now, and we need organization. Or would you prefer we continue living in disorder? Disorder? I repeated, incredulous. I lived in this house for 40 years with my husband, and there was never any disorder. The disorder arrived when you two did. The words left my mouth before I could stop them, raw and honest. I watched Tiffany's face harden. Her eyes narrowed like a snake ready to strike. Marcus, she said without taking her eyes off me, tell your mother that if she doesn't like the rules, maybe she should find somewhere else to live. The silence that followed was deafening. I waited for Marcus to explode, to tell his wife that she was completely out of line, that this was his mother's house, and no one was going to kick her out. But Marcus only sighed, ran a hand through his hair, and said, Mom, Tiffany is right. The rules will help us all get along better. It's not a big deal. They're just some schedules. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My own son was taking her side, validating this madness, turning me into the villain of my own story. It's not a big deal, I whispered, feeling the tears start to sting my eyes. Marcus, they are taking my house. They are taking my life. How can you not see it? I reached out to him, an instinctive maternal gesture, trying to reconnect with my son, but he took a step back, pulling away from me, choosing distance. You're exaggerating, Mom. No one is taking anything from you. We're just trying to make this work for everyone. If we could leave, we would have already, but we don't have the money. We need you to be understanding. Understanding. That word became the mantra Marcus would repeat over the following months every time I tried to defend myself. Tiffany smiled with satisfaction, knowing she had won. I'm glad you understand, Marcus. Your mother needs to learn that things have changed. She turned and went back into the room, leaving me standing there with my son, feeling the abyss between us grow wider and impossible to cross. How can you let her manipulate you like this? I asked him quietly. A final attempt to make him react. Your father would be so disappointed to see you like this, Marcus, turned into a man without a backbone. I know they were harsh words, but they were the truth, and someone had to tell him. Marcus's face hardened. Don't bring Dad into this. He's not here, and you have no idea what he would think. Tiffany is my wife, and I'm going to stand by her. If you can't respect that, then we have a problem. He turned his back on me and closed the door in my face. Literally, the sound of that door closing resonated in my chest like the closing of a coffin. I stood there in the hallway with the crumpled list still in my hand, feeling my world fall apart. I had lost my son. I had lost him to a manipulative woman who had found the perfect victim, an insecure, unemployed, vulnerable man, easy to control. I shuffled back to my room, suddenly feeling like a 100-year-old woman. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the photographs on my nightstand. Arthur and me on our wedding day, young and full of dreams. Marcus as a baby, chubby and smiling in my arms. A family photo on the beach, all of us laughing under the sun. When did everything break? From that day on, I followed the rules, not because I agreed with them, but because I had no strength left to fight. Every morning, I woke up at 6 to shower before the prohibited time. I cooked within the narrow time margins Tiffany had assigned me. I locked myself in my room on Friday and Saturday nights, like a prisoner serving a sentence. And the worst part of it all was seeing Marcus every day, walking past him in the hallways of my house without recognizing him. The son I raised, the boy who used to hug me and tell me I was the best mom in the world, now looked at me as if I were an obstacle in his life. Tiffany had completely transformed him, and I didn't know how to get him back. The following weeks were a silent nightmare. Every day, Tiffany found new ways to remind me that I no longer owned my own life. She began to reorganize the entire house to her liking, without consulting me, as if my 40 years of living here meant absolutely nothing. One day, I came home from grocery shopping and discovered she had moved all the living room furniture. My favorite armchair, the one where Arthur and I used to sit and watch movies on Sunday nights, was now pushed against the wall, almost hidden behind a huge plant she had bought. In its place, a new gray sofa occupied the center of the room. "I bought it with the money Marcus saved," she said, when she saw me staring with my mouth open. We both knew Marcus wasn't working, that the money came from my retirement check, but she dared to lie to my face. "You didn't consult me," I said, trying to stay calm, though my chest was burning with indignation. "You could have asked me before changing everything." Tiffany didn't even look up from her cell phone. She was sitting on her new sofa, legs crossed, painting her nails a deep red that reminded me of blood. "I don't need your permission to improve this house, Estelle. It was old and depressing. Now at least it has some style." The dismissive way she said old and depressing hit me like a slap. She wasn't just talking about the furniture. She was talking about me, my life, everything Arthur and I built together. I tried to talk to Marcus that night, but he already had his automatic response ready. "Mom, the old sofa was worn out. Tiffany is just trying to make the house nicer. You should thank her instead of complaining." Thank her? For spending my money on things I didn't ask for erasing my husband's memories from this house, for transforming my home into something unrecognizable? But that was just the beginning. Tiffany started inviting her friends over without telling me. They arrived in a group, loud and invasive, occupying the living room as if it were a public coffee shop. I locked myself in my room, listening to their laughter and conversations, feeling like a stranger in my own space. Once I came out to go to the bathroom, and one of them looked me up and down with obvious disdain. "Is that your mother-in-law?" she asked Tiffany in a tone she didn't bother to lower. Poor thing. It must be hard living as a hanger-on at her age. Her friends laughed, and I felt the humiliation burn inside me. Tiffany said nothing to defend me. She just smiled and changed the subject, leaving me standing there like a fool while they all ignored me. She began to control what I ate. She said I needed to diet, that at my age I should take better care of myself. She eliminated everything I liked from the pantry: the oatmeal cookies I ate with my coffee in the mornings, the chocolate I saved for difficult times, even the strawberry jam Arthur used to buy me every month. "Those things have too much sugar, Estelle. They aren't healthy," she'd say, while filling the shelves with her ridiculously expensive organic products that I ended up paying for. When I dared to buy something for myself, something small that would give me even a moment of happiness, Tiffany would find it and throw it in the trash. "I told you no sugar, Estelle. Why don't you listen to me?" And Marcus, my own son, nodded as if she were doing me a favor, as if controlling every aspect of my life was an act of love and not cruelty. One afternoon, I decided to cook the family chili that Marcus had always loved, that recipe my mother taught me, which had been in our family for generations. I wanted to reclaim even a moment of connection with my son, to remind him of the days when we were a happy family. I spent the entire afternoon in the kitchen during my small allowed time window, putting all my love into that dish. When I served dinner, Tiffany smelled the chili and wrinkled her nose in disgust. "What is this? It smells terrible." My heart sank. "It's Marcus's favorite chili," I said, trying to smile. "He used to love it when he was a boy." I looked at Marcus, hoping he would remember, that he would say something kind, that he would give me even a crumb of affection. But Tiffany spoke first. "Marcus doesn't eat that kind of heavy food anymore. We're watching what we eat, remember? Besides, I already prepared salads for dinner." She pointed toward the refrigerator, where there were indeed 2 salads perfectly arranged in glass containers. Just 2 salads, one for her, one for Marcus, none for me. "I ate during my allowed time," she added with that fake smile I hated so much. "I didn't know you were going to cook, though you should have told me. The rules say you have to coordinate with me before using the kitchen outside your schedule." It wasn't true. I had cooked exactly in my assigned time, But arguing with her was useless. She always found a way to make me look like the culprit. Marcus didn't even try the chili. He ate his salad in silence while I stared at the pot full of food that no one was going to eat. All that wasted afternoon, all that rejected love. That night, I dumped the chili in the trash and cried over the sink, trying not to make a sound so they wouldn't hear me. The days turned into an endless cycle of small humiliations that piled up like stones on my chest. Tiffany criticized my clothes, saying I dressed like an old woman and was embarrassing to be seen with when we went out together. She criticized the way I spoke, the way I walked, the way I existed. And Marcus never said a word, never defended me. He just nodded or looked away. He stopped calling me Mom. Now he only said Estelle in that impersonal tone you use with an acquaintance, not with the woman who gave you life. Every time I heard my name in his mouth without that Mom before it, I felt like I died a little inside. Tiffany had managed to erase even that, even the most sacred bond between a mother and her son. I started to be afraid in my own house, afraid to make noise, afraid to take up space, afraid to breathe too loudly. I tiptoed through the hallways like a ghost, trying not to bother anyone, not to exist too much. My very presence had become undesirable, and I was shrinking every day, making myself smaller, disappearing. One night, I overheard Tiffany talking on the phone with someone. Her voice cut through the thin walls of my house. "Don't worry. I almost have her where I want her," she said, laughing. "It's just a matter of time before she decides to leave herself, and when that happens, this house will be completely ours. Marcus already signed the papers I gave him. The fool didn't even read them." My blood ran cold. What papers? What was she talking about? I pressed myself against my bedroom wall, holding my breath, trying to hear more. "Yeah, the lawyer said that signature is enough. When she leaves or something happens, Marcus automatically inherits everything, and I, as his wife, will have rights over it all. That stupid old woman has no idea what's coming." I felt nauseated. Tiffany wasn't just taking my house while I was alive. She was planning to keep everything legally, and Marcus, my naive and manipulated son, had signed something without even consulting me. The level of betrayal was so profound, I couldn't process it. My own son was helping to rob me, though he probably didn't even know it. The next day, I tried to talk to Marcus about what I'd heard. "Son, I need you to tell me the truth. Did you sign any documents recently? Anything related to the house or inheritance?" He looked at me confused for a second, then uncomfortable. "Tiffany asked me to sign some lawyer papers. She said it was to legally protect us in case something happened to you, to make everything easier." "And you didn't think to consult me?" I asked, feeling my voice break. "You didn't think maybe I should know about documents that involve my house?" Marcus shrugged, that gesture of indifference he had perfected over these months. "Tiffany said it was normal, that all families do this. I didn't want to bother you with legal technicalities." Legal technicalities. My assets, my home, my entire life reduced to legal technicalities. "Marcus, your wife is manipulating you. She is planning to take everything. Don't you see it?" But before he could respond, Tiffany appeared, as she always did, at the exact moment to interfere. "Filling Marcus's head with nonsense again, Estelle? Don't you get tired of creating problems?" She looked at me with those cold, calculating eyes. "Marcus, tell your mother to stop inventing conspiracies. She's paranoid because of her age." And Marcus, like the perfect puppet he had become, looked at me and said, "Mom, Tiffany is right. You're seeing problems where there aren't any." In that moment, I knew I had completely lost my son. There was no way to make him see the truth. Tiffany had built a wall so solid between us that my words couldn't reach him anymore. I was trapped in a nightmare with no visible escape. Things got worse in ways I never imagined possible. Tiffany began controlling even the air I breathed in my own house. She decided my room needed a renovation, and one day while I was at the bank cashing my retirement check, she went in and took out all my things. When I returned, I found boxes piled in the hallway, and my most precious belongings were carelessly tossed about. "What did you do?" I cried, seeing her come out of my room with a bag full of my photographs. Those are my things. You can't touch them." Tiffany didn't even flinch. She set the bag on the floor and dusted off her hands as if she had been handling garbage. "Relax, Estelle. I'm just organizing. Your room was a mess, full of old junk nobody needs." I opened one of the boxes, and my heart broke into 1,000 pieces. There were the love letters Arthur wrote me during our courtship, the drawings Marcus made in kindergarten, the shawl my mother knitted for me before she died, all wrinkled and mixed with old clothes, without any respect, without any care. "These things are my life," I said, tears streaming down my cheeks. "They are not junk. They are my memories." "Well, your memories take up too much space," Tiffany replied, crossing her arms. "Besides, I need that closet for my clothes. The one in our room is already full." Our room. The master bedroom that had been mine and Arthur's for decades was now theirs. And now they wanted my closet too, my space, everything I had left. "I am not giving you my closet," I said, trying to sound firm, though my whole body was shaking. "You already have the master bedroom, the big bathroom, half the house. My room is the only thing I have left." Tiffany smiled, that snake smile I knew so well. "Well, then I guess these boxes will stay here in the hallway. It would be a shame if someone tripped over them and got hurt." It was a veiled threat. If I didn't yield, she would destroy my things, throw them out, make them disappear. I saw it in her eyes. That calculated cruelty she had perfected. I swallowed and nodded, defeated. "Fine, you can use the closet." Her smile widened. "I knew you'd come around, Estelle. See, when you cooperate, everything is easier." That night, I stored my most prized memories in a small shoebox that I hid under my bed. Arthur's letters, the photos of baby Marcus, the engagement ring I no longer wore because Tiffany said it was outdated. Everything I had left of my former life now fit in a box I had to hide as if I were a criminal. Tiffany started inviting Marcus to go out without me, something they had never done before. "Let's go to the movies," she'd say, taking Marcus by the arm. "Just the two of us. We need couple time." And they would leave me alone in the house, my house, feeling like an intruder who should be grateful they allowed her to stay. When they returned, they always brought takeout food, but only for the two of them. The smell of pizza or fried chicken would fill the house while I was in my room with an empty stomach, wondering when my life had turned into this. Once, Marcus knocked on my door and offered me a slice of pizza. "We brought extra in case you were hungry." Before I could accept, I heard Tiffany's voice from the living room. "Marcus, get over here. That pizza is for lunch tomorrow. You can't just give it away." And Marcus, as always, obeyed. He shrugged and said, "Sorry, Mom," before closing my door. He didn't even have the courage to stay, to stand up to his wife, to choose me even just once. The humiliations became part of my daily routine. Tiffany started leaving me chore lists: wash her clothes, clean her bathroom, cook their favorite meals. When I protested, she said it was the least I could do since I was living here for free. For free. In my own house, which I paid for with my earnings for years. One day I dared to refuse. "I am not washing your clothes, Tiffany. I am not your maid." Her face transformed into a mask of fury. "Oh no? Well, then I want you to pay me rent. If you won't contribute with work, contribute with money. $500 a month for your room." $500? I repeated, incredulous. "This is my house. I don't have to pay you anything." Tiffany moved close to me, so close I could smell her expensive perfume, the one she bought with my money. "This house will be Marcus's someday, and Marcus is my husband, so technically I have as much right as you do. Now, wash my clothes or pay me." I didn't have $500 extra. My retirement check barely covered the household bills, food, and the expenses Tiffany constantly generated. So I washed her clothes, hating myself with every garment I put in the washer, hating my cowardice, my inability to defend myself, my fear of being completely alone. Marcus finally found a job, but it was a part-time position that barely paid $800 a month. I thought maybe that would change things, that maybe now they could leave, and I would get my house and my life back. But instead of looking for a place of their own, Tiffany announced that the money would be used to further improve the house. They bought a huge flat-screen TV for the living room, a ridiculously expensive set of pots, new curtains for all the windows, all with that money that was supposedly for their independence. "And when are you planning to move out?" I asked them one night during dinner. The question hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Tiffany stopped eating and stared at me. "Move out? Why would we move, Estelle? We're perfectly fine here. Besides, you need us. You're an older woman living alone. It's dangerous. You should be grateful we're here to take care of you." Take care of me. They were slowly destroying me and calling it care. "I don't need you," I said with the firmest voice I could muster. "I lived alone for 3 years after Arthur died, and I was perfectly fine. You said this was temporary." Marcus finally spoke, but his words were worse than his silence. "Mom, don't be selfish. Tiffany is right. At your age, you shouldn't be alone. Besides, it is my house too, or did you forget I'm your son?" Selfish. He called me selfish for wanting my own house back, for wanting to live without having my every move, every breath controlled. I felt something inside me definitively break. That something that had been holding me up. That hope that Marcus would eventually wake up and see what they were doing to his mother. "You're right," I said, standing up from the table. "It is your house too. Someday it will be all yours. I hope it's worth it." I left my plate unfinished and went to my room. I heard Tiffany tell Marcus, "Your mother is so dramatic, always making a scene." And Marcus laughed. My son laughed at my pain. I started avoiding them. I only left my room when absolutely necessary. I ate as little as possible so I wouldn't have to use the kitchen during their hours. I became a ghost in my own house, invisible, silent, non-existent. And still, Tiffany found ways to remind me that I was the problem. "Estelle, your presence makes Marcus tense," she told me one day. "Could you try to be less noticeable? When you are in the common areas, try not to draw attention to yourself." Less noticeable. They wanted me to disappear completely, to stop existing for their convenience. One afternoon while I was cleaning the bathroom during my assigned time, I found papers hidden behind the mirror, legal documents with Marcus and Tiffany's names. I read them with trembling hands and confirmed my worst suspicions. Tiffany had made Marcus sign a broad power of attorney, documents that gave her control over medical, financial, and even the house decisions if something happened to me. There was also a document claiming to be a care agreement, where I supposedly agreed to let them stay in the house in exchange for them caring for me in my old age. The document had my signature, but I had never signed it. It was a crude forgery, but probably enough to create legal problems if someone questioned it. My head was spinning. Tiffany wasn't just taking my house and my son. She was preparing the legal ground to take everything. She was a calculated fraudster, and Marcus was her unwitting accomplice, or maybe not so unwitting. I no longer knew what to think of my own son. I put the documents back exactly where I found them. I couldn't confront them yet because I didn't know what to do. I didn't have money for an attorney. I had no one to turn to. My family was either gone or lived far away. My friends had become distant over these months because Tiffany always found excuses for me not to go out. I was completely alone and trapped. That night, as I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, I thought of Arthur. I thought about how he would have handled this situation. Arthur was a man of action, not words. He would never have allowed anyone to humiliate us like this. And at that moment, lying in the darkness of my prison, something shifted inside me. A spark of anger, of dignity, of strength that I thought was lost forever. I still didn't know how, but I was going to get my life back. I was going to get my house back. And if that meant losing Marcus in the process, then maybe I had already lost him a long time ago. Maybe the son I knew died the day he chose a cruel woman over his own mother. The night of the refrigerator incident came as the final straw. It had been an especially difficult day. Tiffany had made me clean the entire house because she was having visitors the next day. Her friends were coming for tea as if my living room were her private social lounge. I spent hours scrubbing floors, dusting furniture, tidying every corner until my knees and back ached. When I finished, it was almost 11 o'clock at night. Tiffany inspected my work with a critical eye, running her finger over the window frames, looking for dust like a merciless supervisor. "I suppose it's acceptable," she finally said, without even looking at me. "You can go to sleep," as if she were giving me permission to rest in my own house after cleaning up for her guests. I went to my room exhausted but couldn't sleep. My stomach growled with hunger. I hadn't eaten almost anything all day because Tiffany had used the kitchen the whole time, preparing elegant snacks for her meeting the next day. My assigned hours had been completely ignored, but I said nothing because I had learned that protesting only made things worse. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, the hunger was unbearable. I figured everyone would be asleep by then, and I could quietly sneak down to grab something to eat. Just a piece of bread, some cheese, anything to calm the emptiness in my stomach. I got up carefully, put on my slippers, and left my room, tiptoeing like a thief in my own house. The kitchen was dark and silent. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking I had managed to go downstairs without waking anyone. I approached the refrigerator and put my hand on the handle. It was in that moment, just as I started to open it, that I felt the blow, a dry, hard slap on my hand that made me drop the handle immediately from the pain and surprise. "Where do you think you're going without permission?" Tiffany's voice came out of the darkness like a serpent's hiss. She flicked on the kitchen light, and there she was in her pink silk robe with a look of fury on her face. My hand was stinging where she had hit me, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation I felt. "I'm hungry," I said, my voice barely audible. "I just wanted to get something to eat." I hated myself for sounding so weak, so pleading. Tiffany crossed her arms and blocked the refrigerator with her body, as if it were a treasure she had to protect from a thief. "At 2 in the morning? Without asking me? I already told you 1,000 times that the food in this house is managed, Estelle. You can't just come and eat whenever you feel like it." "It's my refrigerator," I whispered, feeling the tears start to well up in my eyes. "My food. My house." But even as I said those words, I knew they sounded hollow, devoid of power. Tiffany laughed, a cruel laugh that echoed in the silent kitchen. "Your house? We'll see about that." I heard footsteps on the stairs, and Marcus appeared, disheveled and sleepy-eyed. "What's going on? Why are you shouting?" I looked at my son with hope, thinking that maybe this time, this one time, he would defend me, that he would see the absurdity of the situation, an older mother being slapped for trying to eat in her own house. "Your mother was trying to steal food from the refrigerator without permission," Tiffany said before I could speak. "I've explained the rules to her 1,000 times, but she won't listen." Steal. She had called me a thief in my own kitchen. I looked at Marcus pleadingly, waiting for him to say something, anything. "Mom," Marcus said with a tired sigh, "is it really necessary to do this in the middle of the night? You know the rules. If you were hungry, you could have waited until morning." My legs began to tremble. My own son was blaming me for being hungry, for wanting to eat in my own house, for existing. "Marcus, please," my voice broke. "It's ridiculous. She slapped my hand for trying to open the refrigerator. Don't you see how sick this is?" I held out my hand, showing him the red mark that was beginning to form. "Look at me, son. Look at me and tell me this is okay." But Marcus didn't look at my hand. Instead, he looked at Tiffany, who gave him a meaningful look I couldn't decipher. And then my son said the words that would destroy any hope I had left. "My wife is the boss of this house now. You need her permission even to breathe." The world stopped, even to breathe. The words floated in the air like sharp knives, stabbing my heart again and again. My son had just told me I had no right, even to the air I breathed without his wife's permission in my own house, the house I built with his father, the house where he was born, where he took his first steps, where I grew as a mother. Tiffany smiled triumphantly. She had completely won. She had taken my son and turned him into her weapon against me. "See, Estelle, Even Marcus understands how things work now. The faster you accept it, the better for everyone." She walked over to the refrigerator, calmly opened it, and took out a bottle of water. She drank it in front of me slowly, savoring not just the water but her victory. "Now get back to your room," she ordered, closing the refrigerator. "And the next time you're hungry during unauthorized hours, deal with it or ask for permission, as appropriate." Marcus nodded, backing her up. "Mom, go to sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." But I knew we wouldn't talk about anything tomorrow. Tomorrow would be the same as today, and the day after, too. I walked up the stairs, feeling that every step cost me a piece of my soul. I entered my room and closed the door. I sat on the edge of my bed, and it was there, in the darkness of my prison, where everything finally changed. Something inside me broke, but not in the way they expected. I didn't break in defeat. I broke into clarity. I saw my life with brutal sharpness. I saw that I had been begging for love, begging for respect, begging for a place in my own home. I had allowed them to reduce me to nothing, to turn me into a pleading shadow, and all because of fear. Fear of losing Marcus, fear of being alone, fear of admitting that my son was no longer the boy I knew. But that night, with my hand still stinging from the slap, with an empty stomach and a shattered heart, I made a decision. A cold, clear, definitive decision. I was no longer going to beg. I was no longer going to plead. I was no longer going to allow them to treat me like trash in my own house. I got up and turned on my bedroom light. I searched under my bed for the box where I kept my most precious things. Inside was a little money I had been saving in secret. $20 and $50 bills I hid whenever I could. It wasn't much, maybe a couple of $100 in total, but it was something. I also pulled out an old notebook and started writing. I wrote down everything that had happened in these months, every humiliation, every abuse, every moment Marcus chose Tiffany over me. I didn't know what this record would be good for, but something told me I had to document everything. As I wrote, tears fell onto the paper, staining some words, but I didn't stop. I wrote until my hand ached, until I had emptied all the accumulated poison from my chest. And when I finished, when there were no more words to write, I knew exactly what I had to do. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to give them the spectacle of seeing me broken and pleading one more time. I was going to do something they would never expect from me, something that would hurt them much more than any scream or complaint. I was going to leave. I was going to disappear from their lives and leave them with exactly what they wanted. The house without me. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I stayed sitting on my bed, looking out the window as the dark sky slowly transformed into a gray sunrise. With every minute that passed, my decision became more solid, more clear. There were no more doubts, no more fear. There was only a cold, definitive certainty. I had to get out of there before they completely destroyed me. At 6 a.m, when I heard Marcus and Tiffany getting up, I sprang into action. I waited until they went into the bathroom and locked my door. I pulled an old suitcase from the closet, the one Arthur and I used on our last trip to the coast together. I ran my fingers over the worn surface, remembering better days, days when love and respect were not a luxury, but something natural. I packed the essentials: clothes for a week, my personal documents, the photographs I kept in the shoebox, Arthur's letters, everything that truly mattered fit in a small suitcase. 40 years of life reduced to a few objects I could carry alone. I realized that everything else, the furniture, the appliances, the material things, meant nothing without dignity. I put the money I had saved in my purse, along with my medication and the house keys. I looked around my room one last time. Those walls had witnessed so many important moments: sleepless nights taking care of Marcus when he was a baby, late-night conversations with Arthur planning our future, tears shed after his death. Now, they were just walls that held in my suffering. I heard Marcus and Tiffany going downstairs to eat. Perfect. I heard them arguing about what to have for breakfast. I heard Tiffany giving orders and Marcus obeying. That morning ritual had completely excluded me. I waited a few more minutes until I was sure they were busy in the kitchen. I grabbed my suitcase and my purse. I breathed deeply. This was the moment. I opened my door slowly, grateful that the hinges didn't creak. I walked down the hallway toward the stairs, my heart pounding so hard I thought they would hear me, but they were too absorbed in their world, in their bubble where I didn't exist. I went down the stairs step by step, holding my breath. The front door was only a few feet away. A few more steps and I would be free. But just before leaving, I stopped. I couldn't just leave. They needed to know that this time was different, that it wasn't a tantrum or a drama. It was a final decision. I left my suitcase by the door and went to the foyer table where we always left the mail. I took a piece of paper and a pen from my purse. My hand trembled slightly, but my mind was completely clear. I began to write in a firm, calm hand. Marcus and Tiffany, I'm leaving. Don't try to find me. The house is all yours now, just as you wanted. Enjoy everything you so desperately wanted to take from me. But remember that a house without love is just an empty building. We'll see how long it takes that truth to catch up with you. The property taxes are due next month. They are $1,200. The water and electricity are paid at the payment center every 15th. The heating system needs maintenance before winter. It costs around $300. I hope Marcus's part-time job is enough to cover everything. Estelle. I reread the letter. It was perfect. Short, cold, informative, with no tears, no pleas, no drama, just facts. I left it in the center of the table where they couldn't miss it. Then I grabbed my suitcase and opened the front door. The cool morning air hit my face like a slap of reality. I didn't look back. If I did, if I saw my house one more time, I might falter. I closed the door softly behind me with a gentle click and walked down the path toward the street. Every step felt lighter, as if I were leaving behind not just a house, but invisible chains that had been choking me. I didn't have a specific plan, but I did have a place to go. Beverly, my childhood friend, lived across town. We had grown distant over the past few months because Tiffany always made excuses when I wanted to visit her, that Marcus needed me, that there were things to do around the house, that it was dangerous for me to go out alone. Now I understood it was just another way to isolate me, to cut me off from any external support. I walked 3 blocks to the bus stop. The sun was fully rising now, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. It was beautiful, and I realized it had been months since I had stopped to watch a sunrise. I had been so consumed by survival inside that house that I had forgotten a world existed outside. The bus arrived and I got on. The driver looked at me curiously when he saw my suitcase, but said nothing. I sat by the window and watched the streets of my neighborhood pass by. I knew every corner, every store, every tree. I had lived there my entire adult life. I was leaving behind not just a house, but an entire life. But strangely, I didn't feel sadness. I felt something akin to peace. Like when you take off a shoe that has been hurting you all day and finally your feet can breathe. The constant oppression, the perpetual fear, the daily humiliation, all of it was being left behind with every mile the bus traveled. I arrived at Beverly's house after 40 minutes. It was a modest but cozy house with flowers in the front yard and a rocking chair on the porch. Beverly had always had a knack for making any space feel like home. I rang the doorbell, feeling nervous for the first time since I left. What if she didn't want to see me? What if she thought I was crazy? The door opened, and there was Beverly with her silver hair pulled back in a bun and kind eyes behind her glasses. When she saw me standing there with my suitcase, her expression changed from surprise to concern. "Estelle, my God, what happened?" She didn't say anything else. She simply opened her arms, and I collapsed into them. I cried as I hadn't cried in months. I cried for everything lost, for my son I no longer recognized, for the house I left behind, for the woman I used to be and almost forgot. Beverly held me without asking questions, letting me empty out all the accumulated pain. When I could finally speak, I told her everything, every detail, every humiliation, every moment of brokenness. Beverly listened in silence. her face showing increasing indignation. When I finished my story, she took my hands and said with a firmness that comforted me, "You are staying here as long as you need to. This is your home now, and that son of yours and that viper of a wife are going to regret treating you like that. You'll see." I settled into Beverly's guest room. It was small but cozy, with light green curtains and a bed with a soft comforter. That night, I slept more deeply than I had in months. There were no nightmares, no startled awakenings every time I heard a noise, just peaceful, restorative sleep. Meanwhile, in my old house, Marcus and Tiffany were waking up to a new reality. I imagined the scene, Tiffany shouting my name, expecting the breakfast that never arrived. Marcus going upstairs to look for me and finding my room empty. The initial panic, the confusion, and finally finding the letter. I imagined them reading it, maybe even laughing at first, thinking it was a tantrum and I would soon return. But something would tell them that this time was different, that there was no turning back, that they had finally pushed too far, and the submissive mother, the convenient mother-in-law, had disappeared forever. And most importantly, now they would have to face the reality that I had been sustaining alone all this time, the expenses, the responsibilities, the bills that arrived every month, everything they took for granted while treating me like trash. Now it was their problem. The first week at Beverly's house was like waking up from a long, exhausting nightmare. Every morning, I opened my eyes expecting to hear Tiffany's voice ordering me to do something, but there was only peaceful silence and the birds singing outside. Beverly treated me with a kindness I had forgotten existed, making coffee in the mornings and asking how I had slept without expecting anything in return. "You don't have to do anything," she told me on the third day when she found me washing the breakfast dishes. "Just rest, Estelle. Recover." But I needed to feel useful. I needed to prove to myself that I still had worth beyond being someone's emotional punching bag. So, I insisted on helping with the chores, but this time it was different. I did it because I wanted to, not because I was forced. My phone started ringing on the second day. It was Marcus. I let it ring until it stopped. Then came the messages. First, they were confused. "Mom, where are you? We're worried." Then they became more urgent. "We need to talk. Please answer." And finally, they showed their true nature. "The bills are coming. We don't know what to do. You have to come back." I didn't answer any of them. Every message that arrived was a confirmation that I had made the right decision. They weren't asking how I was, if I was okay, if I had a place to sleep or something to eat. They were only worried about the bills, the responsibilities, everything I had been handling alone while they enjoyed my house like ungrateful parasites. Beverly told me Marcus had come to her house looking for me on the fourth day. "He rang the doorbell like crazy," she said, while we were having tea in her living room. "I told him I didn't know where you were, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell him. He looked desperate, Estelle, but it wasn't the desperation of a son worried about his mother. It was the desperation of someone who had just realized he lost his safety net." She was right. Marcus's messages confirmed it. They initially thought they could handle it alone. Marcus's part-time job paid $800 a month. The property taxes were $1,200. Already the math didn't work, and that wasn't counting the electricity, water, gas, food, gas for the car, and all the expenses Tiffany generated with her constant whims. Tiffany tried to call me once. Just once. Her voice on the voicemail was icy. "Estelle, I know you're being dramatic and looking for attention. When you're done with your tantrum, come home. But don't think this will change the rules. Things will continue to be the way I say." I deleted the message, feeling a mixture of indignation and satisfaction. She still didn't understand anything. She still believed she was in control. In the second week, Beverly convinced me to block their numbers. "You don't need to read that, Estelle. It only hurts you, and they don't deserve another second of your time." So I blocked Marcus, I blocked Tiffany, and it was like finally closing a door that had been open, letting in cold drafts for months. I started to recover slowly. Beverly took me for walks in the park every afternoon. At first, I got tired quickly. Months of constant stress had weakened my body more than I realized, but little by little my strength returned. something else returned too, my smile. One day, Beverly took a photo of me while we were feeding the ducks at the pond, and when I saw it, I was surprised. That smiling woman in the photo was me, but it had been so long since I'd seen myself like that I barely recognized myself. "You look 10 years younger," Beverly commented. "It's amazing what peace of mind does." She was right. The wrinkles around my eyes seemed less deep. My posture was more upright. Even my voice sounded different, stronger and more confident. I was finding myself again after months of being lost. Meanwhile, as I later learned from a neighbor Beverly ran into at the grocery store, things at my old house were quickly falling apart. The first bill they couldn't pay was the property taxes. The notice arrived from the county tax office with a warning of foreclosure if they didn't pay within 30 days. Marcus tried to get a loan, but with his precarious job and no solid credit history, no bank would lend to him. Tiffany started pressuring Marcus to find more work. "How is it possible that you can't even keep a house?" she screamed at him, according to the neighbor, who heard them fighting through the open windows. "You're useless, just like your mother." The irony was delicious. Now Marcus was experiencing the same treatment I had endured, and Tiffany was showing her true nature without the filter she used when I was present. Water was next. By not paying for 2 months straight, they cut it off. Suddenly, the house Tiffany had been redecorating with such care had no water to bathe, to cook, to wash her expensive clothes. They had to carry buckets from a neighbor's house who temporarily took pity on them. The princess who scoffed at my old junk was now hauling water like she was in a rural village. Food became a problem. Tiffany was used to buying expensive organic products, premium cuts of meat, imported cheeses. With a few $100s a month and mounting bills, those luxuries disappeared. They started eating cheap noodles and rice every day. The same Tiffany who controlled my every bite was now going hungry because of her own stupidity. Marcus tried to get a second job, but no one hired him. He was desperate, stressed, probably not sleeping well. And Tiffany, instead of supporting him, blamed him for everything. "This is your fault," she told him. "If you had been more of a man, if you could have supported me, we wouldn't be like this. Your mother ruined us by leaving." The neighbor told me that part with indignation. "I let your son have it, Estelle. I told him they treated his mother like trash, and now they were reaping what they sowed. You should have seen his face." I imagined the scene and felt a small measure of satisfaction. It wasn't revenge I sought, it was justice, and justice was finally catching up to them. In the 3rd week, I received a certified letter. It was from a lawyer representing Marcus. I opened the envelope with trembling hands, fearing the worst. The letter was a formal request for me to return to fulfill my family obligations, and a veiled threat that if I didn't, they would take legal action to protect the family assets. I showed the letter to Beverly. She immediately called her nephew, who was an attorney. He read it and laughed. "This has no legal standing, Ms. Vaughn. They cannot force you to live in your own house or pay the bills if you don't want to. In fact, they are the intruders from the moment you left. You have every right to evict them if you want." Evict them. I hadn't thought about that. The house was still mine. It was in my name. I had left, but they had no legal right to stay there without my permission. Beverly's attorney explained that I could start an eviction process immediately. It would take about 2 months, but the house would be completely mine again. I thought about it all night. Did I want the house back? Did I want to return to that place full of bitter, recent memories, the house where my son betrayed me, where I was hit for trying to eat, where I slowly lost my dignity? On the other hand, it was my home, the home I built with Arthur, where we lived our best years. I decided to wait, not out of weakness but out of strategy. I wanted Marcus and Tiffany to fully feel the weight of their actions. I wanted them to hit rock bottom, to understand that the life I had been sustaining for them was neither easy nor free. And above all, I wanted Marcus to wake up from Tiffany's manipulation and see what he had truly lost. At the end of the month, the electricity shut-off notice arrived. The house was completely dark, without water or electricity, with debts piling up and no money to pay anything. The fantasy Tiffany had built was crumbling brick by brick, and Marcus was finally beginning to see the truth he had been avoiding for months. It was in the 4th week when everything definitively exploded. Beverly arrived one afternoon with fresh news from her network of neighborhood informants. "Estelle, you won't believe what happened," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Tiffany left Marcus. She left the house with her bags and told him he was a failure who couldn't even keep a roof over their heads." I stood paralyzed, processing the information. Tiffany had abandoned Marcus. The woman who swore to love him in sickness and in health, who manipulated him into betraying his own mother, who turned him into her obedient puppet, had left him the moment he ceased to be useful. The irony was so perfect, it almost hurt. "And Marcus?" I asked, unable to stop myself. Despite everything he had done to me, he was still my son, and a part of me still worried about him. "He's devastated," Beverly replied. "The neighbor says he cries all day. The house is a mess. No electricity, no water. He's still there like a ghost, not knowing what to do." I couldn't sleep that night. I imagined Marcus alone in that dark house, probably hungry, penniless, abandoned by the woman for whom he sacrificed his mother. One part of me wanted to rush to help him, to hug him like when he was a boy and had nightmares. But another part, the part that had grown stronger during these weeks, knew that if I did, I would be validating everything he did to me. I would be telling him he could treat me like trash, and I would always be there to pick up the pieces. On the 5th day after Tiffany left, Marcus showed up at Beverly's house. He arrived at dusk, haggard and dirty, with deep circles under his eyes and wrinkled clothes. Beverly let me know through the intercom. "He's here. Do you want to see him?" My heart was beating fast. This was the moment I had been avoiding and anticipating at the same time. "Tell him to come in," I replied with a shaky voice. I sat in the living room, waiting for him, trying to prepare myself for what was to come. When he walked in, I barely recognized him. My son, who had always been meticulous about his appearance, looked like a vagrant. He had several days of beard growth, greasy, disheveled hair, and a stained shirt. But what impacted me most were his eyes. They were red and swollen, filled with a pain I knew very well. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. That word, which I hadn't heard from his lips in months, sounded strange and familiar at the same time. He stood at the entrance to the living room as if he didn't know if he had permission to approach. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, waiting, needing him to take the first step, to say what he had to say. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. "I'm so sorry, Mom. You were right about everything. About Tiffany, about what she was doing to me, about what we did to you." Tears began to roll down his cheeks, leaving clean trails on his dirty face. "I was an idiot. I was the worst son in the world. I treated you like trash when you only gave me love my whole life." I wanted to run to him, hug him, tell him everything was forgiven, but I stayed seated, firm. "And what changed, Marcus?" I asked in a quiet but cold voice. "Are you apologizing because you truly understand what you did, or because Tiffany left you and now you're alone?" The question hung in the air like a sharp knife. Marcus collapsed. He literally fell to his knees on the living room floor, sobbing like a child. "You're right. I realized everything when she left. She told me I was useless, that I was never worth anything, that she only tolerated me because she thought you had more money. She said she wasted her time with me." His words came out brokenly between sobs. "And while she was saying all that to me, the only thing I could think of was how I told you exactly the same thing, how I treated you worse than a stranger." "She hit my hand for trying to eat in my own house," I said, without emotion in my voice. "And you told her she was the boss of the house, that I needed her permission even to breathe. Do you remember that, Marcus?" He nodded, unable to look at me, shame painted on every line of his face. "I think about it every day," he cried. "Every day. I hate myself for saying those words. Dad must be rolling in his grave because of what I became." I betrayed everything you both taught me. I betrayed the only person who was always there for me." His pain was real. I could see it. But pain didn't erase months of abuse and humiliation. "Do you know how I felt that night?" I asked, and for the first time my voice trembled. I felt like my son had died, that the boy I raised, cared for, and loved with all my heart had disappeared, and in his place was a cruel stranger. I died 1,000 times in those months, Marcus. 1,000 times. I wished I wouldn't wake up every morning, because the pain of living in my own house, being treated like that, was unbearable. "I know, Mom, I know, and I have no excuses," he said, finally looking up at me. "Tiffany manipulated me, but I let her. I chose to believe her instead of you. I chose every day to treat you badly because it was easier than confronting her. I am completely guilty, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I finally understand. I finally see everything I lost." We were silent for a long moment. Beverly had discreetly disappeared, leaving us alone. I looked at my son kneeling on the floor, shattered and remorseful, and felt a mixture of emotions so complex I couldn't separate them. Love, pain, anger, compassion, all mixed in an impossible knot in my chest. "Apologies are not enough," I finally said. "You can't destroy a person for months and expect a few tears to fix everything." Marcus nodded. "I know. I'm not asking you to come back or to forgive me right now. I just needed to tell you I'm sorry and that you have every right to hate me." "I don't hate you, Marcus," I admitted, feeling my own tears begin to form. "That's the worst part of it all. After everything you did to me, I still love you, because you are my son. But I don't trust you anymore. I don't know if I can ever trust you again." Those words broke both of us because it was the most painful truth that existed between us. "What are you going to do now?" I asked him after a moment. Marcus shrugged, defeated. "I don't know. The house is without electricity or water. I owe 3 months of property taxes and 2 months of utilities. My job barely pays for food. I'll probably end up losing the house anyway." There was acceptance in his voice, as if he knew he deserved to lose everything. "It's my house, Marcus," I reminded him softly. "It's in my name. You aren't going to lose it because, technically, it was never yours." I watched him process that information, realizing another layer of his stupidity. He had fought for a house that wasn't even legally his. He had betrayed his mother for something he never owned. "I can start the eviction process if I want," I continued. "My lawyer says in 2 months you would be out, and the house would be completely mine again." I saw fear cross his face. "Are you going to do it?" His voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "Part of me wants my house back. Another part never wants to return to that place full of painful memories." Marcus remained silent, not daring to ask for anything, not expecting anything. That humility, that acceptance of the consequences of his actions, was new. Maybe for the first time in his life, he was facing reality without anyone protecting him. "Beverly prepared you something to eat," I said, pointing toward the kitchen. "Go, eat something. You look terrible." "I don't deserve your kindness," he said without moving. "I probably don't agree, but I'm not being kind for you. I'm doing it because I am not like Tiffany. I don't abandon people when they are at their lowest point, even when they've hurt me." It was a silent lesson, a demonstration of the difference between real love and the manipulation he had confused it with for so long. Marcus ate in silence in the kitchen, while I remained in the living room, processing everything. When he finished, he stood at the door, ready to leave. "Thank you for listening to me, Mom, and thank you for the food. I know I don't deserve any of this." I nodded without saying anything else. I watched him walk away down the street, shoulders slumped, a shadow of the man he used to be. 2 months passed since that visit from Marcus, 2 months in which I had to make the most difficult decisions of my life. I didn't go back to the house immediately. I needed time to heal, to recover the pieces of myself I had lost in those months of torment. Beverly was my anchor throughout that process, reminding me every day that I deserved respect and dignity. Marcus did not show up again, but he sent short messages every week. He didn't ask for anything, just updates. I got a second job at a gas station. I paid the water. It's working again. I cleaned the whole house. It looks like you liked it. They were simple messages that showed genuine effort for the first time in a long time, but I still wasn't ready to reply. It was Beverly's attorney who finally helped me see things clearly. "Ms. Vaughn, that house is yours. You have 3 options. Get it back and move back in, get it back and sell it to start over somewhere else, or keep it and rent it out while you live elsewhere. But what you cannot do is let fear decide for you." She was right. I had fled my house, but I was still letting that place control me. I was still a prisoner, even if I wasn't physically there anymore. So I made a decision. I would return, but on my own terms. The house was mine, and it was time to reclaim it completely. I asked the attorney to prepare a legal document. It wasn't an eviction, but an agreement. Marcus could stay in the house under very specific conditions. He would pay a symbolic rent of $200 monthly, which would go directly into a savings account in his name so that when he was ready, he could truly become independent. He had to keep the house in perfect condition. And most importantly, he had to attend therapy to work on how he had been manipulated and how to repair our relationship. When I presented the document to Marcus at a neutral coffee shop, his hands shook as he read it. "You're giving me another chance?" he asked, his eyes filled with tears. "It's not a chance, Marcus," I clarified firmly. "It's a contractual agreement. If you fail on any of these points, you leave the house immediately and without discussion. Do you understand?" "I understand," he nodded fervently. "And Mom, about the rent money, I can pay you more. I have 2 jobs now and—" I interrupted him, raising my hand. "It's not about the money. It's about you learning to value things, to understand that nothing is free, and that actions have consequences. The $200 are symbolic, but important." He signed the document without hesitation, but I did not return to the house yet. Instead, I decided to stay with Beverly for a few more months. I needed Marcus to demonstrate with actions, not just words, that he had truly changed. And to my surprise, he did. He sent photos of the clean house every week, proofs of payment for utilities, even certificates of attendance from his therapy sessions. In his therapy, as he later told me, he finally processed how Tiffany had manipulated him, how she identified his insecurities, his unemployment, his vulnerability, and used them to turn him into her puppet. How she systematically isolated him from his mother until he could no longer see reality. His therapist made him understand that even though he had been manipulated, he was still responsible for his actions. That distinction was crucial. 3 months after signing the agreement, I finally returned to my house. Marcus greeted me at the door, visibly nervous. The house was impeccable. He had cleaned every corner. He had repaired things that were broken. He had even put fresh flowers in the vase by the entrance, the one Tiffany had thrown away, which he recovered. "Welcome home, Mom," he said with a shaky voice. I walked through the rooms, seeing all the changes. My favorite armchair was back in its original spot. The photographs Tiffany had stored were back on the walls. My closet held all my clothes perfectly organized. He had erased every trace of Tiffany from the house as if she had never existed. But the most important thing was that he had recovered the spirit of home that the house had before. It no longer felt like a prison, but like a refuge. "You did a good job," I told him, and I saw his shoulders relax with relief. "Thank you for giving me this chance, Mom. I know I don't deserve it, but I swear I won't disappoint you." The following months were a slow reconstruction. Marcus and I didn't go back to the way we were before, because that was impossible. Something had broken between us that could never be fully repaired. But we built something new, something different, a relationship based on mutual respect, clear boundaries, and honesty. I was no longer the mother who did everything for her son, and he was no longer the son who took it for granted. We were 2 adults learning to coexist with the scars of the past. Marcus worked hard at his 2 jobs. He saved every penny he could. 6 months after the agreement, he came home with news. "Mom, I think I'm ready to look for my own apartment. I've saved enough for the deposit and the first month's rent." I felt a mixture of pride and relief. "Are you sure?" "Completely sure. It's time for me to be truly independent. It's time for me to prove that I can live my own life without being a burden to anyone." The day Marcus moved to his small apartment, I helped him pack. It was strange and bittersweet. This time, the separation was healthy, necessary, chosen for the right reasons. "Visit often," I told him as I loaded the last box into his car. "And Mom," he replied, hugging me, "thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason in the world to do so." Now I live alone in my house, as it should have been after Arthur passed away. Beverly comes to visit 3 times a week, and sometimes we stay up late talking and laughing. Marcus comes for dinner every Sunday. Our relationship isn't perfect, but it's real and built on honest foundations. He is still in therapy, working on his issues. I also started therapy to heal the wounds those months left me with. Sometimes I think about Tiffany and wonder where she is. As far as I know, she found another vulnerable man with money and is repeating the same pattern. I hope that person has the strength Marcus didn't have to escape in time, but it's no longer my problem or my worry. She is a closed chapter in our lives. What I learned from this entire experience is that love without respect is not love. It is abuse in disguise. That family doesn't give you the right to mistreat someone. That sometimes moving away from the people you love is the only way to save yourself and give them a chance to grow. And above all, I learned that it is never too late to reclaim your dignity, no matter how long you have lost it. My house is once again my sanctuary. The walls no longer hold echoes of humiliation, but of music I play when I want, of laughter with Beverly, of honest conversations with Marcus when he visits. I got my life back, I got my space back, and most importantly, I got myself back. That night, when I tried to open the refrigerator and received a slap, seems like a distant bad dream now. A reminder of how low a person can fall when they forget their worth, but also a reminder of the strength I found when I finally said, "Enough." When I chose my well-being over the fear of loneliness. I am 62 years old and I am starting over. Some would say it's too late to begin again, but I know it's never too late to choose dignity. It's never too late to reclaim your life. And it's never, ever too late to remember that you deserve respect, especially in your own home, especially from the people who claim to love you. This is my story. It is not a story of revenge, but of recovery. It is not about punishing, but about healing. And if anyone going through something similar reads this, I want you to know this. You have the power to change your situation. You may be afraid. You may feel weak. But inside you is a strength you don't even imagine. You just need to take the first step. The rest comes after. Today, I open my refrigerator when I want. I eat when I'm hungry. I breathe without asking permission. And every time I do these simple things, I remember the price I paid for this freedom. And I smile. Because finally, after everything, I came home, not just to the physical house, but to myself. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.